Outside Reed's Auto Repair, Officer Lauren Whitaker had a black mechanic pinned against a customer's car, her finger pressed into his chest. Her cruiser lights washed the shop in red and blue. Grease stained his coveralls. A wrench hung loosely from his hand. Neighbors stared. "Stop resisting," she snapped. He was not resisting. He was not even raising his voice. He just kept saying one thing. "Ma'am, this is my shop." Officer Lauren Whitaker saw attitude. She saw defiance. She saw someone who needed to be put in his place. What she did not see was the last name stitched above his pocket, and she definitely did not know that the arrest report she proudly filed would land on the desk of the one man in the city who outranked her and shared Isaiah Reed's blood. If you think power should answer to truth, hit subscribe because this story is just getting started. She pulled up like she owned the block. The cruiser rolled in slow. Not the slow of someone being careful, but the slow of someone making a point. Lights off, but the engine loud enough that heads turned. Officer Lauren Whitaker parked at an angle that blocked half the entrance to the lot. The kind of park that said, "I do not need to follow the same rules as everyone else." She stepped out without hurry, one hand resting on her belt, sunglasses on, even though the sky had gone mostly gray. She was sharp-featured, decorated with 3 commendations, a reputation in the department for being aggressive in the way that got quietly praised in locker rooms and quietly flagged in HR files. She believed in order, believed in compliance, believed deeply, and without much examination, that hesitation from a civilian was the first sign of a problem. She scanned the lot the way she always did, assessing, categorizing. Her eyes landed on Isaiah. He was standing near the front bumper of a customer's sedan, a wrench in one hand, a shop rag in the other. Talking to a man in a gray jacket about what sounded like a coolant issue. Calm, unhurried, completely unbothered by her arrival, which, though she would not have admitted it, bothered her immediately. She walked toward him. Hey, not a greeting, a command. Isaiah glanced up, finished his sentence to the customer, then looked at her fully. "Can I help you, officer? This your vehicle?" She gestured at the sedan he was standing beside. "It is a customer's vehicle. This is my shop. I got a complaint about a car blocking the sidewalk on the north side of the building." Isaiah nodded once. "That has been moved. My apprentice handled it. I will need to verify that. You are welcome to walk around and look." Something about his tone, even unbothered, not performing deference but not performing defiance either, seemed to tighten something behind her eyes. She took a step closer. "You got ID on you?" The customer in the gray jacket shifted uncomfortably. Jalen appeared in the bay doorway, watching. Isaiah looked at her for a moment, not with anger, with the particular patience of a man who had been through this particular dance before and had learned that stillness was the only move that did not cost him something. "I am on my own property," he said, responding to a complaint that has already been resolved. "I did not ask for a summary. I asked for ID, and I am asking why you need it." That was the moment. That one question, reasonable, quiet, legally sound, and something in Officer Lauren Whitaker shifted from procedure into something else entirely. Her jaw tightened. She pulled off her sunglasses because I am telling you, I need it. She stepped into his space. "You got a problem with that?" "I do not have a problem," Isaiah said. "I have a question." She pointed. One finger pressed into the center of his chest, just below the gold stitching that read Reed. "Do not get smart with me." Mrs. Ramirez had come to the doorway of the waiting area. 2 men from the east side had stopped pretending to look at their phones. A woman walking past on the sidewalk had slowed to a stop. Jalen had not moved from the bay entrance, his face tight, his hands very still at his sides. Isaiah looked down at the finger on his chest, then back up at her. "Ma'am," he said, steady as a wall, "this is my shop. Stop resisting." He was not resisting. He had not moved. His hands were at his sides, wrench in one, rag in the other, neither raised, neither threatening. His voice had not climbed a single register, but Officer Lauren Whitaker had already written the story in her head, and she was committed to it now, in front of witnesses, in front of a body cam that was recording every second. She grabbed his arm and pushed him back against the customer's car, hard enough that the sedan rocked slightly on its suspension, hard enough that Mrs. Ramirez made a sound from the doorway, hard enough that 2 people on the sidewalk raised their phones. But Isaiah said nothing. He did not pull away, did not raise his voice, did not give her a single thing she could use. He just looked at her, steady, clear-eyed, with the quiet dignity of a man who knew exactly who he was, and waited for the moment to finish becoming what it already was: a record, a document, a truth that would outlast her version of events. The body cam blinked red. It had caught everything. The sedan's side mirror dug into Isaiah's lower back. He felt it, sharp, specific, but he did not flinch, did not shift, did not give Officer Lauren Whitaker the movement she seemed to be waiting for, the twitch or the pull or the raised voice that would let her rewrite what was happening into something that justified what she had already done. He understood with the clarity of a man who had learned this lesson long before today that his stillness was the only language available to him right now. Every other response had a cost he was not willing to pay. Officer Lauren Whitaker's hand was still on his arm, gripping, not restraining. There was nothing to restrain but gripping. The way someone grips something when they need to feel like they are in control of it. "You think this is funny?" she said. "No, ma'am. You think you can talk to an officer any way you want. I have not raised my voice once." Her grip tightened. I said, "Stop resisting." From the bay doorway, Jalen took one step forward. Isaiah caught it in his peripheral vision and gave the smallest shake of his head. One motion barely visible, but Jalen read it and stopped, his hands balling into fists at his sides, his jaw working through something he was smart enough not to say out loud. Good kid, Isaiah thought, learning the hardest lesson there is. On the sidewalk, 3 phones were up now. Not held dramatically, just raised quietly, the way people raise them when they understand that what they are watching needs to exist somewhere beyond this moment. A woman in a yellow jacket had stopped completely, her grocery bag set down at her feet, her phone level and steady. An older man leaning on a cane had turned his body fully toward the scene. A teenager on a bike had planted both feet on the ground and was not moving. The neighborhood was watching. It always watched. It had learned to. Officer Lauren Whitaker seemed to register the phones somewhere in the back of her awareness, but not in the way that slowed her down, in the way that made her double down, as if backing off now would mean admitting something she was not prepared to admit. She pulled Isaiah's arm, rotating him toward the hood of the sedan, hands on the car. Isaiah complied slowly, deliberately placed both hands flat on the hood. The wrench set down on the asphalt first with a careful, quiet click. He did not slam it, did not throw it. Set it down the way a man sets down something he intends to pick back up when this is over. "Oh, you want to tell me what this is actually about?" he said. His voice was low, conversational almost. "It is about you failing to cooperate with a lawful investigation into a parking complaint that was resolved earlier into whatever I say it is into." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to something that was not quite a whisper, but was not meant for the phones either. "You want to keep pushing because I have got all day." Isaiah said nothing. He looked straight ahead at the hood of the car, at his own hand spread flat against the metal, at the faint reflection of the gray sky above them. He thought about the shop, about the sign he had painted himself, about Jalen watching from the doorway, absorbing every second of this, filing it somewhere in his understanding of how the world worked. He thought about what it meant to respond and what it meant to endure. He chose endurance not because he was afraid, not because he believed he had no rights, but because he understood something Officer Lauren Whitaker clearly did not, that the most powerful thing he could do right now was nothing. Let her keep building the case against herself. Let the body cam keep running. Let the phones keep recording. Let the moment keep becoming exactly what it was, without his anger muddying the water. Mrs. Ramirez had come fully outside now, arms crossed, face tight with something between fury and grief. The woman in the yellow jacket had not lowered her phone once. Jalen stood in the bay entrance like a statue, watching his mentor get pressed against a car in front of his own shop, learning something about dignity that no classroom could have taught him. Officer Lauren Whitaker finally stepped back slightly. The grip loosened, but did not release. "Do not move," she said. Isaiah did not. He stared at the horizon beyond the hood of the car, past the street, past the watching faces, past all of it. And he breathed slow, even, controlled. The body cam blinked red, still recording, still catching everything she thought she was getting away with. The complaint was filed by 3 people, 3 independently, without coordination, without knowing each other's names. The woman in the yellow jacket, the older man with the cane, and Mrs. Ramirez, who had gone home, sat at her kitchen table and then picked up the phone with the particular resolve of a woman who had decided that silence was no longer something she could afford. Each account said the same thing in different words. A mechanic, his own property, no aggression, no resistance, a finger in his chest, a shove against a car. An officer who had arrived looking for a reason and manufactured one when she could not find it. The complaint had been logged, time-stamped, and routed to the Office of Internal Affairs on the 4th floor of the city's Central Precinct building. It landed in the queue the way most complaints did, as a file number, a date, a set of attached statements, and a Bodycam footage request that the system generated automatically. Standard procedure, except nothing about what followed would be standard. The duty sergeant who processed the intake form that night was a methodical man named Briggs, who had worked internal affairs and had developed the particular emotional flatness of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by most of it. He read the statements, flagged the Bodycam request, typed the subject's information into the system with 2 fingers, the way he always did. Name, Reed. Isaiah. Address, Reed's Auto Repair, 412 Franklin Avenue. He moved to the next field, stopped, went back, read it again. Reed. He sat with that for a moment, the cursor blinking in the empty field, the hum of the building's ventilation the only sound in the room. Then he picked up the phone, called his supervisor, and said 4 words in a tone that was carefully, professionally neutral. "You need to see this." Commissioner Elijah Reed was still in his office. This was not unusual. He kept hours that his staff quietly marveled at and occasionally worried about, the kind of schedule that spoke less to ambition and more to the weight of what he had taken on. He was broad-shouldered, with close-cropped gray at his temples, and the measured, unhurried manner of a man who had learned that reaction was a luxury he could not afford in his position. He had spent time dismantling systems inside his own department that had been comfortable for decades. He had enemies in the building. He knew their names. He kept working anyway. His assistant knocked twice and opened the door without waiting, which meant it was something that could not wait. She placed a single printed sheet on his desk. The intake summary flagged per protocol because the subject shared the commissioner's surname and the department's conflict of interest policy required disclosure. Elijah picked it up, read the address first, felt something shift in his chest before his eyes even reached the name. Then he read it. Reed Isaiah, 412 Franklin Avenue, Reed's Auto Repair. He set the paper down on the desk with the careful, deliberate motion of managing something that wanted to move fast inside him. He looked at it for the long moment. The fluorescent light above his desk hummed faintly. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed. He thought about his brother, about Isaiah's hands, always working, always building something, about the shop sign Isaiah had painted himself and called to tell Elijah about, his voice carrying a pride he had never quite been able to hide, even when he tried, about every conversation they had had over the years in which Isaiah had quietly, firmly refused every offer of protection, every suggestion that the name might make certain things easier. "I do not want easier," Isaiah had said once. "I want earned." Elijah picked up the intake form again, read the officer's name, read the 3 witness statements summarized in the notes field, read the words. Subject was non-combative and compliant throughout. He set it down a second time, reached for his phone, pulled up Isaiah's number, stared at it. Then he put the phone face down on the desk and pressed the intercom instead. "Pull the Bodycam footage from this incident. Full, unedited file on my desk by morning." He leaned back in his chair. The paper sat in front of him under the fluorescent light. The name printed in plain black type like it weighed nothing at all. It weighed everything. The file was on his desk in the morning. Elijah had not slept much, not because he was panicking. Panic was not something he had easy access to anymore, not after navigating a department that had spent decades protecting itself from accountability, but the particular kind of sleeplessness that comes from knowing something is true. Before you have seen the proof of it, had kept him company through most of the night. He had been at his desk, coffee untouched, the intake form still sitting where he had left it. He opened the file without ceremony. The footage was the full Bodycam record from the moment Officer Lauren Whitaker stepped out of her cruiser to the moment she drove away. Elijah watched all of it. He did not skip, did not forward. He owed Isaiah that much, or at least to see every second of what his brother had stood through without calling him once. The first few minutes were almost mundane. Officer Lauren Whitaker crossing the lot, the way her eyes found Isaiah and stayed there. The initial exchange, Isaiah's voice even and clear through the audio. Officer Lauren Whitaker already carrying an edge that had no basis in anything that had happened yet. Elijah watched his brother's face on the screen, calm, careful, the particular stillness of a man who had made a decision before the conversation even started. Then the finger. Elijah watched it land on Isaiah's chest and felt something tighten in his jaw that he did not release for a long time. He watched the shove, watched the sedan rock, watched Isaiah place the wrench on the ground with a patience that under any other circumstances might have looked almost graceful, watched his brother spread his hands flat on the hood of a stranger's car, in front of his own shop, in front of his apprentice, in front of his customers, and say nothing, do nothing. Become nothing but a still point in the middle of someone else's aggression. He watched Officer Lauren Whitaker lean in close. The audio caught her voice dropping, not low enough as it turned out. The words were audible. "You want to keep pushing, but because I have got all day." Elijah stopped the footage, sat with that for a moment, then pressed play and watched the rest. 3 other people had seen the tape. Deputy Commissioner Vargas, who had been with the department and had the careful political instincts of someone who had survived multiple administrations, watched it twice without speaking. But when it finished the second time, he took off his glasses, set them on the conference table, and said quietly, "That is going to be a problem." Captain Sophia Reyes from Internal Affairs watched it once, made 2 pages of notes, and requested Officer Lauren Whitaker's full disciplinary file before she had even left the room. She had been in Internal Affairs long enough to recognize the difference between an officer making a mistake under pressure and an officer operating from a settled, practiced set of assumptions. What she saw on the tape was the second thing: the tone, the escalation without cause, the finger, the language. When Officer Lauren Whitaker thought the volume was low enough, it was not a lapse. It was a pattern looking for an opportunity. The third person was Lieutenant Vance Reynolds, Officer Lauren Whitaker's direct supervisor, a broad red-faced man who had championed her last 2 commendations, and had a habit of describing her aggressive approach as decisive in performance reviews. He watched the footage in silence, and when it ended, he said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "She did not know who he was." Vargas looked at him. "That is your response." Reynolds shifted in his chair. "I am just saying if she had known." "If she had known," Sophia Reyes said, not looking up from her notes. "It would have been worse because then we would be talking about deliberate targeting instead of blind assumption." She kept her pen. The fact that she did not know who he was is the only thing that makes this salvageable. The room went quiet. Elijah had said almost nothing through any of it. He sat at the head of the table, the footage window still open on the laptop in front of him, paused on the last frame. Isaiah standing in his lot, watching Officer Lauren Whitaker's cruiser pull away, his expression unreadable, the gold stitching on his coveralls catching the light. Read right there. The whole time she had pressed her finger into it and never once looked down to read it. Elijah closed the laptop. "Pull her for a formal review," he said. "Nobody talks to the press, nobody talks to her, and nobody." He looked at Reynolds specifically, gives her a heads up. The room understood the tape had done what Isaiah's silence had always intended it to do. It had told the truth without him having to say a word. The hearing room on the 4th floor of the municipal building was not a dramatic space. No gallery, no audience, no wood-paneled walls or elevated bench, like the courtrooms 2 blocks over. Just a long rectangular table, 8 chairs, fluorescent lighting that hummed faintly if the room got quiet enough, and a mounted screen on the far wall that had been used for budget presentations and retirement slideshows more often than anything like this. But today, it felt different. Deputy Commissioner Vargas sat at the head of the table. To his left, the department's legal counsel, a woman named Barbara Klein, who had been doing this job for years and had learned to keep her face completely still during proceedings. To her left, 2 members of the Internal Affairs Division. Across from them, Officer Lauren Whitaker in full dress uniform, her commendations pinned and aligned, her posture rigid in the way that people hold themselves when they are trying to look unafraid. Her union rep sat beside her, a folder open in front of him that he kept glancing at without reading. Commissioner Elijah Reed was not in the room. That had been a deliberate decision, one that Barbara Klein had recommended, and Vargas had agreed to without much debate. His presence would have made it personal, and this, at least procedurally, needed to not be personal. Vargas folded his hands on the table. "We are going to watch the footage once in full. No interruptions." Officer Lauren Whitaker's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The lights did not dim. Nobody made it cinematic. Someone just clicked a laptop trackpad and the screen filled with the gray-blue timestamp of a Bodycam feed. The footage was the full record. In the first few minutes, you could see Isaiah standing near the sedan, wrench in hand, talking to a customer, calm, measured, completely ordinary. The kind of scene that if you passed it on the street, you would not look at twice. Then, Officer Lauren Whitaker's cruiser appeared at the edge of the frame. The room watched her walk toward him, watched the way she scanned him before she had said a single word, watched the set of her shoulders, the angle of her chin. The internal affairs officer to Vargas's left made a note without looking down at his pad. They heard her voice, clipped, declarative, carrying an edge that had nothing to do with the parking complaint she had cited as the reason for the stop. They watched Isaiah answer her, steady, cooperative, not performing submission, but not giving her anything to work with either. Just a man standing in front of his own shop, answering questions he should not have been asked. They watched her step closer. They watched her finger come up. They watched her grab his arm and push him back against the customer's sedan. Not a violent shove, but deliberate, unnecessary, the kind of contact that sends a message more than it controls a situation. And they heard what she said. Stop making this difficult. He had not been making anything difficult. The room was very quiet. Barbara Klein's pen rested motionless against her notepad. One of the internal affairs officers had stopped writing entirely. Vargas watched the screen without blinking. Officer Lauren Whitaker watched it too. And something in her face. Not guilt exactly, not yet, but something shifted. The way a person looks when they hear their own voice on a recording and realize it does not sound the way they thought it did inside their head. The footage ended. The timestamp froze. Someone closed the laptop. Vargas let the silence sit for a moment before he spoke. Officer Whitaker. His voice was even, not unkind, but carrying no warmth either. The individual you detained runs a licensed business at that address. He was on his own property. The parking complaint that initiated the stop had already been resolved prior to your arrival, as confirmed by 2 witnesses and your own dashcam timestamp. He paused. He never raised his voice. He never raised his hands. He identified himself and his business within the first moments of contact. Officer Lauren Whitaker said nothing. Do you have anything you would like to add to your written statement? Her union rep leaned slightly toward her. She did not look at him. No, she said quietly. Vargas nodded once, gathered his folder, looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. Not with anger, but with something heavier than that. Disappointment maybe, or the particular exhaustion of a man who had hoped this time the tape would show something different. It never did. Elijah drove himself. No detail, no department vehicle, just his own car, a dark blue sedan that needed an oil change. He kept forgetting to schedule, pulling into the lot of Reed's Auto Repair after the shop had officially closed. Isaiah was still there. Elijah had known he would be. His brother had never been the first one to leave. The lot was empty except for a single customer car, waiting for a morning pickup, and Jalen's bicycle locked to the drain pipe near the bay entrance. The shop lights were still on inside, throwing a warm rectangle of yellow across the asphalt. Elijah could hear the faint sound of something being cleaned, a methodical, rhythmic sound that had been the soundtrack of Isaiah's life for as long as Elijah could remember. But he sat in the car for a moment before getting out. He was not sure what he was going to say. He had been turning it over through the hearing, through the internal deliberations, through the quiet procedural machinery of consequence grinding forward, and he still had not found the right opening. There was not one. Probably some conversations did not have right openings. They just had the moment you finally walked through the door. He got out of the car. Isaiah appeared in the bay entrance before Elijah had taken 4 steps, a clean rag in his hand, coveralls unzipped to the waist and tied off at the hips. He looked at his brother, the way he always looked at him directly without performance. The way 2 people look at each other when they have known each other long enough. That pretense would feel like an insult. Figured you would come by, Isaiah said. Figured you would still be here, Elijah replied. Isaiah stepped back and let him in. They sat in the small office at the back of the shop. 2 folding chairs, a metal desk covered in invoices, a coffee maker that had seen better years. Isaiah poured 2 cups without asking. Elijah accepted his without comment. For a moment, neither of them spoke, and the silence between them was the comfortable kind, the kind built over decades, the kind that did not need to be filled immediately. Elijah looked at his brother at the grease still worked into the creases of his knuckles despite the clean rag. At the shop around them, the tools hung in their places, the floor swept, everything ordered and cared for. Why did not you say something? He asked. Isaiah looked at his coffee cup, turned it once in his hands, then looked up. Because I should not have to. Elijah held that, did not rush past it. Isaiah. No, not sharp, not defensive, just firm. The way Isaiah was firm about everything from the ground up, not from the surface down. Think about what you are actually asking me. You are asking why I did not use your name to make her stop. Why I did not drop the connection, pull rank by proxy, remind her that I had access to power she could not see. He set the cup down. And the answer is because the minute I do that, I am admitting that it only matters because of who you are. That without you, she gets to do what she did and walk away from it. Elijah was quiet. I have been building this shop, Isaiah continued. I have been Isaiah Reed. And what happened out there in that lot? That happens to men who do not have a commissioner for a brother every single day. It happened to me before you had that title. It will happen to someone else tomorrow. He looked at Elijah steadily. If I use your name to make it stop, I am not solving anything. I am just buying myself an exemption. The coffee maker clicked and hissed softly in the corner. You could have called me, Elijah said. Quieter now. I know you had your phone. I know that too. And you still, I wanted the tape, Isaiah said simply. I wanted it clean. No phone calls, no names, no back channels. Just what happened exactly as it happened with nothing she could point to and say I had complicated it. He leaned back in his chair. You needed that tape to be clean as much as I did. Oh, maybe more. Elijah looked at him for a long moment. He thought about the footage, about Isaiah's hands flat on the hood of that car, about the stillness his brother had held, like something sacred while everything around him tried to make him break. You knew what you were doing, Elijah said. It was not a question. Isaiah almost smiled. I knew what I was doing. The press conference was held in the department's main briefing room. Elijah had written his own statement, had not handed it to communications to soften or to legal to sanitize. He had sat at his kitchen table the night before with a legal pad and written it by hand first. The way he had been taught to do with anything that mattered. Get it out of your head and onto paper before you let anyone else near it. He stood at the podium, 12 reporters in folding chairs, 2 cameras from local affiliates, a handful of community advocates who had been quietly notified and had shown up without being asked. Deputy Commissioner Vargas stood to his left, Barbara Klein to his right. Elijah did not clear his throat, did not shuffle papers. He looked at the room and began. When Officer Lauren Whitaker responded to a parking complaint at a licensed business on Franklin Avenue, the complaint had been resolved prior to her arrival. The business owner, who was on his own property, cooperative throughout, and at no point aggressive or non-compliant, was physically detained without cause. The interaction was captured in full on Bodycam footage, which has been reviewed by Internal Affairs and Department Command. He paused. Officer Whitaker has been suspended without pay pending completion of a mandatory bias intervention and de-escalation program. Upon return, she will be placed on supervised patrol. This department does not consider this matter closed. It considers it a beginning. The room stirred. Pens moved. Someone near the back raised a hand before he had finished. He kept going. I want to be direct about something. The individual involved in this incident is my brother. I want the public to know that this fact did not accelerate the investigation, did not influence the outcome, and was not known to Officer Whitaker at the time of the incident. The body cam footage speaks for itself regardless of anyone's last name. The outcome would have been, should have been, identical either way. He looked up from the paper. The fact that we are all aware it might not have been is exactly the problem this department is committed to fixing. He took 2 questions, answered them without deflection, then stepped back from the podium and let Vargas handle the rest. The community reaction was not simple. It never was. After the story had moved beyond the local affiliates, a clip of the body cam footage, released in edited form through the department's transparency protocol, had been shared widely enough that Isaiah's name was attached to it before he had said a single word publicly. His phone had rung that morning. He had answered none of it. Some people called it justice, said the system had worked, that accountability had arrived, that Elijah Reed was the kind of leader the city needed. They shared the footage with captions about dignity and restraint and what real strength looked like. Others said the suspension was not enough, said suspension with a return date was a formality, dressed up as consequence, said the only reason any of it happened was because Isaiah happened to share a last name with the right man, and that without that accident of family, the complaint would have been filed, reviewed, and quietly closed like hundreds of others before it. They were not wrong. Isaiah knew they were not wrong. He sat in the back office of the shop that evening and read through enough of it to understand the shape of the conversation, then set his phone face down on the desk. He did not have a statement prepared, had not called a lawyer about the settlement the department had quietly offered through Barbara Klein days prior, had not returned the call from the community advocate who wanted him to speak at a town hall. What he had was a legal pad with some notes on it, an idea he had been turning over since the night Elijah had sat across from him in this same office and asked why he had not said something. Because the answer to that question, because I should not have to, was not just about him. And it had never just been about him. He picked up the phone and called Elijah. His brother answered on the second ring. "I am not taking the settlement," Isaiah said. A pause. "Isaiah, I know what I want instead." He looked at the legal pad. "I want to talk to you about something, not as the commissioner, as my brother." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "I am listening," he said, and Isaiah began to explain what accountability could look like if you built it with your hands instead of your anger. A story like this can become a footnote. That is how it usually works. The press conference fades. The clip stops circulating. The advocates move to the next fire. The department moves to the next crisis, and the thing that felt seismic in the moment gets quietly absorbed into the sediment of everything else that happened that year. Isaiah had counted on that, not bitterly, strategically. He had wanted the noise to die down before the work began because the work he had in mind could not survive being a spectacle. It needed to be ordinary. It needed to smell like motor oil and burnt coffee, and the particular mix of frustration and small victory that filled a working garage on an afternoon. But it needed to be real before it could be anything else. The program did not have a formal name yet. The paperwork called it a Community Police Vocational Initiative, which was accurate the way a blueprint is accurate. Technically correct, completely unable to convey what the thing actually felt like once you were standing inside it. What it felt like was this: 8 teenagers showing up on afternoons each week to learn basic automotive repair under Isaiah's supervision. 4 of them from the neighborhood, 2 referred through a youth diversion program, 2 who had simply heard about it and asked to join, which Isaiah considered the best possible sign. Alongside them on a rotating schedule negotiated through the department's Community Affairs Division, 2 officers per session, different officers each week. There is no rank insignia during shop hours, just first names and work gloves. And the shared humiliation of not knowing how to do something and having to be taught. Jalen had become a junior instructor without being asked. He had simply started explaining things to the newer kids with the same quiet patience Isaiah had modeled for him. And Isaiah had watched it happen and said nothing, because some things you do not interrupt. The bay had been reorganized to accommodate the larger group. A whiteboard had appeared on the wall near the tool chest. Isaiah was not sure who put it there, covered in diagrams and notes in 3 different handwritings. Someone had brought in a second coffee maker. The radio still played something old and soulful, but now there were arguments about it, which Isaiah privately enjoyed. During the program, Officer Lauren Whitaker walked through the door. She was not in uniform, dark jeans, a plain gray jacket, hair pulled back. She looked smaller than she had in the lot that afternoon. Not physically, but in the way that people look smaller when they have had something taken out of them. That was taking up too much space to begin with. She stood just inside the bay entrance for a moment, not quite sure where to put herself, and Isaiah watched her from across the garage without moving toward her or away from her. She had completed the bias intervention program, done her supervised patrol, filed the paperwork that brought her back to active duty. None of that had been his business, and he had made a point of keeping it that way. What she did with the consequence was hers to carry. But she was here. She had come on her own outside of any requirement without being asked. That meant something. Isaiah was not sure yet how much, but it meant something. He crossed the garage slowly. Around him, the afternoon continued. A teenager arguing cheerfully with one of the officers about the correct way to seat a filter. Jalen demonstrating something at the workbench. The compressor cycling on and off in the background. Nobody stopped. Nobody made it a moment. Isaiah stopped in front of her. She met his eyes, held them. There was no speech prepared. He could see that. No carefully rehearsed apology designed to resolve her own discomfort. Just a woman standing in a doorway. She had not been sure she had the right to walk through. Having walked through it anyway, "I do not know if I'm supposed to be here," she said. "You are here," Isaiah said. "That is the part that matters." He turned and walked to the tool chest, pulled open the second drawer, reached in, and came back with a wrench. Not new, but clean, well-maintained, the kind of tool that had been used enough to be trusted. He held it out to her. "Oh, yes." She looked at it for a moment, then she took it. Not forgiveness. That was a longer road, and Isaiah was honest enough not to pretend otherwise. Not humiliation. There was nothing left to prove and no audience to perform for. Just a wrench, just a place to start, just accountability offered with open hands. Isaiah Reed never wanted to be a symbol. He wanted to be a mechanic. He wanted to run his shop, train his apprentice, fix what was broken, and go home with grease on his hands and his integrity intact. He did not pick that afternoon, did not choose to become the story. He just refused to become something smaller than he was while it was happening to him. And that refusal, quiet, costly, deliberate, changed everything. Not because of who his brother was, but because of who he was. There are Isaiah Reeds everywhere. Men and women who stand still under pressure that would break most people. Who choose the tape over the tantrum, the truth over the shortcut, the wrench over the weapon, who build things with their hands and defend them with their dignity. This story was for them. In the end, Isaiah Reed's quiet stand outside his auto repair shop taught us one of life's most powerful and deeply moving lessons. True strength is not loud, dramatic, or aggressive. It is the calm, unshakable dignity of choosing restraint when every instinct screams to fight back. Facing an officer who had already decided who he was before he ever spoke, Isaiah refused to give her the reaction she wanted. He kept his voice steady, his hands visible, and his pride intact. Not out of fear, but out of a profound understanding that his worth did not need defending with anger. In that moment, he protected something far more valuable than his ego, his integrity. He showed that real power lies in stillness, in letting the truth record itself instead of muddying it with emotion. It is the kind of strength that does not break under pressure, but quietly reshapes the world around it. For anyone who has ever felt unseen, misjudged, or powerless in the face of authority, Isaiah's story whispers a heartbreaking yet hopeful truth. You do not have to become smaller to survive. You can stand tall by simply refusing to shrink. That single choice made with grease-stained hands and a steady heart did not just change his afternoon. It sparked real accountability and opened doors for healing between a community and the people sworn to serve it. It reminds us that dignity is never passive. It is the most courageous form of resistance. If Isaiah's story touched something deep inside you, if it made you reflect on your own moments of quiet strength or the times you wished you had stayed composed, drop a comment below and tell us what is one situation where choosing calm over reaction changed everything for you. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you believe in stories that celebrate real character over chaos, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. More powerful tales of everyday courage, accountability, and the quiet victories that matter most are coming your way. Let us keep building a space where truth and dignity win. See you in the next.